What's up? Happy Friday. Today we're going to talk about a Supreme Court case that has to deal with First Amendment rights. Today's case is called Tinker versus Des Moines, and it was issued in 1969. I'm going to read the historical context with you and give you some time to complete some of the activities on your own. And then when we're done, what we're going to do is fill in the decision and precedent boxes together. All right, so let's get into it. Gotta zoom in. Here we go. Okay, so John and Mary Beth Tinker attended a public school in Des Moines, Iowa. In December of 1965, a community group in Des Moines decided to protest American involvement in the Vietnam War by wearing black armbands. The Tinkers agreed to wear their black armbands to school. However, principals in the school district, aware of the students' plans, created a rule that any student wearing an armband to school would be suspended unless the student removed the armband. Although the Tinkers knew about this rule, they decided to come to school wearing armbands anyway. After refusing to take the armbands off, John and Mary Beth Tinker were sent home by the principal. Their suspension lasted until they agreed to come back to school without the armbands. So, the constitutional issue or legal question that we will be exploring in this case is, does freedom of speech include freedom of symbolic speech or expression, meaning your freedom to express yourself through your clothing or just the way you present yourself on a daily basis? And if so, were the Tinkers' First Amendment rights violated by their high school? So take a moment to respond to the question here. If you were a Supreme Court justice in deciding this case, what would your argument be? So bottom left question, 2 minutes, 1 minute, brainstorm and write down a response. All right, so now that you have your answer recorded, we're actually going to go to the next page and start reading about some of the majority and dissenting opinions from Tinker versus Des Moines. Hold on. Just went a little cuckoo with my mouse here. Okay, so here we go. What you're going to do is read these statements, statement A and statement B, with your partner. You can decide which of the two of you want to read statement A and statement B and respond to questions 1, 2, and 3. And then after you do that, you can share out your responses with your buddy. So if you are reading about statement A first, you're going to share the answers with your partner to begin, and then everyone who read statement B will share the answers with their partner. That's going to be on the third page. All right, so take a few minutes for that. Probably I would say anywhere between 5 to 6 minutes for reading and responding to your questions, and then another 4 to share out your responses. That seems appropriate. So take around like 9 minutes total for this, and then you can hit play in your video again when you're ready, and you'll go over the answers with me. All right, so now that you've taken your time to go over your statement questions with your partner, this is when you'll get the final answers. So if you have anything to modify or change, this is the time to do it. I'm going to start with statement A. This comes from Justice Abe Fortas, and he's issuing the majority opinion. So if you notice on page 1, we're going to be taking the notes on the decision. So his opinion that he's giving in statement A reflects the 7 votes on the court that you see in the 7-2 decision. Okay, so question 1 says, were all symbols of political significance banned in school? And explain. If you look at the very first line, Fortas says that no, not all symbols of political significance were banned. He says, it is also relevant that the school authorities did not purport to prohibit the wearing of all symbols of political or controversial significance. So I'm going to go in with my highlighter and I'm going to highlight that. There we go. Oh no, I don't know what that did. Oh, that underlined it. Silly me. Oh my gosh, it's really messing up now. I don't know what I did, but whatever. I'm just going to leave it. I don't want to waste my time with this. Okay, so here we go. So I'm just going to modify my response here. If your answer doesn't sound like what I have, just make the quick changes with me. So Justice Fortis states, not all political symbols were banned in school. Only, I'm going to add in, only the black armbands were banned. So only the armbands, or you know what, let's say I'd used, detail is fun, used to protest the Vietnam War were banned. Yes, there we go. So now we have our detail of what the armbands were and what they symbolized. So make sure you have something that sounds like this in your response. Let's look at question 2. Why does Justice Fortis argue the black armbands are constitutional? All right, so now I'm going to actually try to go in with my highlighting tool. And I want you to focus here towards the middle of his statement. He says, clearly the prohibition of expression of one particular opinion, at least without evidence that it is necessary to avoid material and substantial interference with schoolwork or discipline, is not constitutionally permissible. So he's saying here that when someone wears something that is interfering with schoolwork or with student discipline at school, then that wouldn't be protected under First Amendment freedom of expression. But for students to wear armbands that have little peace signs on them, trying to protest the Vietnam War in that regard, let me just fix this. They're not distracting to anybody, right? They're not actually doing anything wrong in wearing those armbands. So if they didn't interfere with schoolwork or discipline, it was okay for them to wear them. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in here. There we go. So there's our 2. Nope, too big. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's better. Okay, fabulous. So now we have 1 and 2 done. Ooh, let's look at question 3. Do you as a student have rights? Underline 2 statements from the majority opinion that support your response. So you know what, y'all? You do have rights, even if sometimes it doesn't feel like you do. You do. Look at what Fortis says. He says, I'm actually going to highlight from this next statement, but I'll make it a different color so that we know it goes with a different answer. So Fortis says, in our system, state-operated schools may not be enclaves of totalitarianism. That is such a monumental statement, because what Fortis is saying is that schools can't dictate what your political beliefs are or what your opinions on the state of your nation might be, right? They don't, he even continues, school officials do not possess absolute authority over their students. Students in the school, as well as out of school, are persons under our Constitution. So we have that piece there. So that's one statement. The other statement I want you to focus on here, I love what he says at the end. It can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. So he's saying that in certain circumstances, you are allowed to express yourself as students the way that you choose to within your school. So I like to compare this to a school that's telling you, like, this would be the modern day example of a school telling you that you couldn't wear, let's say, a shirt or even a face mask that is in support of, let's say, like Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Like, you're allowed to wear things like that to school. Schools can't tell you that you can't. So those are some of the things that, as students, you do have the right to wear within your school. So I want to just type these in here. So Fortis says students do have rights with respect to freedom of expression. He says students do not shed their rights when they enter school each day, and that schools are not enclaves of totalitarianism. Fabulous. Let's make this a little smaller. Love it. Beautiful. So now we have A done. Let's move on to B. We have the dissenting opinion. This comes from Associate Justice Hugo Black. Hugo Black was one of the justices that ruled on the case Engel versus Vitale that we've learned about this week with respect to freedom of religion in public schools. So for statement B, we're going to answer our 3 questions here together. I know that you did this with your partner, but we're going to just go over them together to make sure that all of our answers look good. And if we need to make any changes, this is the time to do it. All right. Oops, I'm scrolling down. Gotta scroll up. Okay. So let's look at question 1. What concern did the principals have that caused them to suspend the Tinkers? That comes from the very first paragraph. So I'm going to go in with my markup. Here we go. Principals foresaw they would, that is, took the students' minds off of classwork and diverted them to thoughts about the highly emotional subject of the Vietnam War. So here, they're pretty much saying the principals were concerned the armbands the Tinkers wore to school would distract other students from learning. Right, so taking their minds off of being in school and being present in the classroom, etc., and thinking instead about the Vietnam War. There we go. Question 2 reads, to what extent does the evidence show school was materially and substantially interfered with? So if you look at the second paragraph, this will speak to the answer for question 2. Detailed testimony by some of them shows their armbands caused comments, warnings by other students, the poking of fun at them, and a warning by an older football player that other non-protesting students had better let them alone. So it did look like that wearing the armbands caused a little bit of like a little discussion, commotion at school. So it wasn't like it was just fully ignored, that the Tinkers wore these armbands and nobody noticed or reacted in any way. Hello, what are you doing? Okay, fabulous. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in here. Oh my gosh. Why is it doing that? So I might write in here, the evidence shows school was interfered with to some extent as the armbands did cause students to make comments and or make fun of the Tinkers. Right, so it does sound like there was some stuff going on that day. It wasn't as though everyone just was completely immune or, like I said, they didn't get totally ignored by their peers and classmates at school. Okay, Let's look at the last question. Justice Black is afraid this case has redistributed power in the public school system. Explain the power distribution he discusses in his statement. Let's look at the last paragraph for this one. He says, I wish, therefore, wholly to disclaim any purpose on my part to hold that the federal constitution compels the teachers, parents, and elected school officials to surrender control of the American public school system to public school students. So this is where he's talking about an imbalance in power that's starting to change within the results of this case. He speaks to power being taken from, let's say, those in charge of schools, like school administrators or teachers or school officials, and instead being redistributed to students. And typically, that's not where the power lies in a school. Usually, the people that are calling the shots, I shouldn't even say usually, like, it's really all the time, the people that are calling the shots are the adults. So, this is the power distribution that Justice Black is referring to. So Justice Black refers to a power distribution that removes power from teachers and other school officials and instead gives this power, let me just write this, gives this power to public school students. Okay, so now that we have our questions answered and we know what the majority opinion is, and we know what our dissenting opinion is, now we can put it together. So which side was the winner of the case? Was it statement A, Justice Fortis, or statement B, Justice Black? Well, it was statement A because that's the majority opinion. So this is what 7 out of the 9 justices felt. They agreed with Justice Abe Fortis. So what we're going to type in here at the top in a 7-2 decision, hello, go away. Okay. So we're going to type in at the top in a 7-2 decision, the school rule banning armbands is unconstitutional. Okay. Let's write some more in here. Armbands are a form of symbolic speech and students have the freedom of speech. And lastly, we're going to do one more. Schools can limit your rights when they, let's write this one, substantially interfere with the operation of the school. So this is why you're allowed to wear things that maybe speak to, like I said, when we're talking about politics, like you would be allowed to wear a mask that supports a particular political candidate over another. Like that's allowed. But wearing things like, let's say, clothing with references to drugs or alcohol or curse words, things like that, that would interfere with the operation of the school because it's a violation of the school's code of conduct. Pretty much everywhere, I think those types of clothing isn't allowed in school. So those are your kind of your differences there. So the precedent set, the standard set by the ruling of Tinker versus Des Moines was students do have rights. Here we go. We're going to type this in here. Students do have rights, or they are entitled to rights within their public school, although they can be limited. So like I said, that speaks to certain clothing items that you can or maybe can't wear to school, or things that you can and can't say to others within school, etc. So there we go. We got the whole thing done. Aren't you happy? Fabulous. Um, you don't have any homework for the weekend, so enjoy your next 2 days off. And I will see you on Monday. Everybody have a good weekend, and we will talk again soon.